the entire reason the government is not open right now is because Democrats refuse to be complicit in having millions of Americans, including 100,000 in Kentucky, your home state, if I'm remembering correctly, Scott, that rely on ACA, that would see their premiums rise several
which you can deal with.
You can see what's happening here. Politicians are locked in a shouting match about who's to blame for the shutdown, but nobody on that panel seems to be talking about the people who are actually paying the price.
The Gulf of America is growing between its politics and its people. Just hours before food stamps expired as the government shutdown gets longer, the president and his friends were attending a Great Gatsby-themed Halloween party at Mar-a-Lago. The book, of course, partly about how the working class often pays for the misdeeds of the rich and the powerful. A quote, "They smashed up things and then retreated back into their money or their vast carelessness or whatever it was that kept them together and let other people clean up the mess they had made." Now, the White House had resisted using the food stamp program to be paid for by emergency funds, but two federal judges have now ordered them to do so, and today they said that they would, sort of. It costs more than $9 billion a month to cover the 42 million Americans who are on the food stamp program, and the contingency funds only have $5 billion in it, so the administration says they're just going to pay half and that it won't move other money to cover the rest. Now, this comes as Trump's approval rating has hit its lowest point of this term, and 61% of Americans disapprove of his handling of this government shutdown. I can't imagine what the reaction would have been, Scott, if another president of any party, frankly, had hosted a massive Great Gatsby-themed party at his private club in the middle of a government shutdown that is poised to be the longest ever, while millions of Americans are worried about whether they're going to get food on the table this month.
Yeah, look, I don't know what the connection is between the president's schedule at Mar-a-Lago and the Democrats continuously voting to keep the government shut down in Washington, but I guess I'll indulge the framing. I mean, the bottom line is the Democrats have voted 13 times to keep the government closed. The Republicans, led by Donald Trump, have repeatedly called for the government to be open. If you want to fund SNAP, you can walk in there tonight and vote for the continuing resolution that they have decided not to vote for 13 times. You can try to pin it on Trump, but the bottom line is the Republicans have had a clean point of view here from the beginning, and it's the Democrats who have held the government hostage, including SNAP beneficiaries, for some reason, and that's why we are where we are.
But that sounds almost exactly like a let-them-eat-cake moment, because, I mean, Trump is the president. He's not just a random bystander. He is in this very moment that Americans are worried about whether they're going to get their paychecks. I mean, they're not getting their paychecks. They're not getting their food stamps. Having this kind of moment, I mean, it seems to me that in another political era, and I don't care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, most politicians would not have allowed the optics of what we saw this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, look, I voted against the CR because the CR wasn't going to take care of people's health insurance. Health care was going to go up. I didn't vote for that CR. Scott might remember Republicans didn't vote for the CR previously, the same CR in different years. In fact, Republicans removed a Speaker of the House. We forget about that because he put a CR on the floor. So,
but you did vote against the SNAP benefits, then you admit.
I did not vote against the SNAP.
If you had voted for the CR,
would
we have SNAP right now?
Scott,
would.
What I voted for was a CR that was going to see people in Florida have their health insurance go up almost 100%.
No,
I got
these are separate issues.
No, I got 25,000 people in my district that are going to lose their health insurance because this CR didn't.
And how many do you have going to lose their SNAP?
Okay. Well, first of all, let's talk about SNAP for a second. Why did the Republicans send $40 billion to Argentina? Where is that money, Scott? Why didn't that go to Americans?
Why?
That's America first.
It's a credit
that's
swap.
We're
going to turn a profit on
That's America first. We're sending money to Argentina rather than taking care of people's SNAP business. I would have loved to have been at Mar-a-Lago while the girls were in the martini glasses when they were trying to figure out what to do with the judge's order. You know, half the room was probably like, should we pay it? Should we not pay it? And then someone was like, oh, I have a great idea. Let the subjects only get half their rations. I mean, they're only going to give half the SNAP benefits to these people.
How many have the Democrats voted to give?
Scott,
Zero.
look at the polling.
Democrats have repeatedly voted to give zero of SNAP benefits. I'm sorry, this is not. This whole thing could have been averted if Democrats had done what they did in March, which is vote for Joe Biden's budget levels. They have refused to do it. A couple of Democrats in the Senate, like John Fetterman, have shown some courage and backbone. But the bottom line is this party is enthralled to the radical left. That's why they've changed their position from March until now, and that's why people are not getting their SNAP benefits. It's why federal law enforcement isn't being paid. It's why Trump's having to scramble to pay the military. This is a Democratic shutdown because of political fear.
Think about that image for a second. Millions of Americans days away from losing food benefits, and at the same time, the president and his friends are drinking champagne under chandeliers at a Great Gatsby-themed party. You couldn't write symbolism that heavy if you tried. Gatsby is a story about excess, about how the wealthy destroy things and let others clean up their mess. That's exactly what's happening here. The powerful are celebrating while the working class bears the consequences of their carelessness. The Gatsby Party isn't just a bad look, it's a metaphor for this entire political era. Self-indulgent, detached, and insulated from the suffering outside the gates. There's a moral rot underneath this kind of spectacle. When leaders stop seeing hunger as urgent and start seeing it as leverage, democracy becomes hollow. Because how can you say you represent the people if you only notice them when they're useful? And the cruelest part, many of the people losing benefits right now voted for this administration. They trusted the promises about America first, but what they got was me first. A Great Gatsby party during a government shutdown isn't just bad optics, it's a declaration of values. It says, your hunger isn't my problem. Your pain doesn't interrupt my party. That's the America Trump built a country where greed is celebrated and empathy is mocked.
Republicans had. You have the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and the executive, yet the Democrats are to blame.
Is why won't Trump scramble to help Americans put food on the table? That is part of the question that is being asked. He just acknowledged that there was an effort to find money for other things. He was also asked this weekend about the fact that grocery prices have gone up, and here's what he said.
When the stock market is doing well, that doesn't affect everybody. Not everybody's invested in the stock market.
It does.
But there have been grocery prices
no,
are up.
401ks. People have 401ks. Their 401ks are double what they were a year ago.
But for people that don't have 401ks or are not invested in the stock market,
but
they've seen their grocery prices go up. Inflation.
No, you're wrong. They went up under Biden. Right now, they're going down. Other than beef, which we're working on, which we can solve very quickly.
So he's wrong about that. Grocery prices have gone up. From a political and from a practical perspective, why won't Trump have the same energy for people who need to just eat, just like a basic need, as he does for other priorities of his?
Well, I spent the day, Abby, talking to women from around the country, and including a woman who has a small business in which she and her sister clean people's houses. That's her job, and she feeds her family with it. Another woman who has a tiny house, in New Jersey, whose electricity bill has gone up to $600 a month, and she can't afford it. Certainly, there's concerns. And when I was talking to Patty, the woman in Kentucky, she's a Trump voter, and I said to her, tell me what's going on. And I said, how are you feeling about the economy? And I expected everything to be rah-rah, right? I thought this should be like, and she did say, I love President Trump. She said, but you need to know that the gas is great, like gas has come down, but my goodness, like Halloween candy was $40 for an entire bag, and it's difficult. This is Eastern Kentucky. This is, my hometown of, that part of the country. And so it's Appalachia. It is rough. But she said that, she would vote for President Trump again, and she believed that he was going to be able to juice up the market, that again, we were going to be able to return to the Trump economy. She said she would vote for him again if she had the chance. She was a supporter of President Trump. They trust him. They believe in him. He delivered for them before. They think he's going to again. Yes, there's work to be done for sure. And I agree with Scott. The Democrats have to get the government open. We cannot continue. You can't mix apples and oranges. The ACA is one issue. The federal budget is another issue. Let's get this done.
David?
You're saying we can't mix apples and oranges, and that's exactly what they're doing. The entire reason the government is not open right now is because Democrats refuse to be complicit in having millions of Americans, including 100,000 in Kentucky, your home state, if I'm remembering correctly, Scott, that rely on ACA, that would see their premiums rise several
which you can deal with
1,000%.
separately. It doesn't have to be, those two things do not go together.
But the way that they're doing this right now, they're combining both.
Voting to support the budget still doesn't, if you keeping it closed doesn't fix the ACA. The ACA needs to be reformed. Healthcare needs to be reformed. This is a way bigger question.
You guys failed at that last time. The whole thing was repeal and replace. You had a trifecta. You tried this. You failed.
That's not true. They're still in the concept of a plan stage.
No, in terms
they've
of
been in the concept stage since 2000.
But David, you would admit that the ACA was a Democrat legislation, yes? And you would admit that the subsidies that we're talking about now were passed by Democrats, yes. And you would admit that the sunset provision in the subsidies, which comes up at the end of the year, was in place because of Democrats, yes. Now you want to make it a Republican problem. These are not the same issues. You could open the government today, and then you could negotiate with with Republicans about ACA. And by the way, my suspicion is, and you know this, there are probably, and I know there are some House Republicans that would love to negotiate on it, but under duress, under a hostage-taking situation, connecting disconnected issues, and now you're throwing SNAP onto it, you're throwing all the federal workers who aren't being paid onto it, all because of this fight that you wandered into because of your wing of the Democratic Party. You all led to this SNAP crisis. You all led to this crisis of the government being closed, and you don't know how to get out of it.
Here's where the gaslighting goes into overdrive. Jennings accuses Democrats of holding the government hostage, when in reality, it's his party using hunger as a weapon. This is a classic move. Accuse your opponent of what you're doing yourself. It's manipulation 101. The truth is simple. Republicans tied funding for health care and food assistance together, knowing it would force Democrats into an impossible moral corner. Either cave and let millions lose affordable coverage, or hold firm and let the government stay closed. That's not negotiation, that's extortion. And the fact that Jennings delivers it with a straight face shows how normalized this cruelty has become. When you hear someone say Democrats are refusing to open the government, translate it correctly. They're refusing to abandon the people who rely on them. They're refusing to let the far right dismantle the Affordable Care Act through a backdoor shutdown tactic. That's not obstruction, that's integrity. This is how authoritarian politics works in slow motion. You inflict suffering, then blame your opponent for it. You manufacture a crisis, then claim to be the only one who can end it. Hunger becomes a political strategy, a way to break the will of those who still care about human consequences. So, yes, Republicans are holding the government hostage, but the ransom note doesn't say, fund the government. It says, surrender your principles or your people will starve.
Just a note, in the same CNN poll, Trump's approval rating on his handling of the government shutdown is at 25%. 61% of Americans disapprove of how he's handling this issue. So, you know, I don't even know. I mean, Trump has been effectively MIA on this, and maybe intentionally so. But the American people don't apparently think that he is playing a constructive role.
Correct, and I think that this is the problem that the president has, either wandered into or boxed himself into. He's had plenty to say on Republican shutdowns, on Democrat-led shutdowns over the years. When he's been out of the White House, he has had a lot to say about the responsibility of the president that is in power, or the president and the parties that are in power in terms of shutdown. In fact, he's effectively said that it's the president's fault, it's the president's responsibility. So here we are back in this moment. The other thing beyond this, though, I think, is that irrespective of, we can sit up here and say this person is responsible, this party is responsible, it's the American people that are making the decision. And the American people have been very clear that they blame the President of the United States for the shutdown, they blame the Republican Party for the shutdown, and they are very angry about the state of the economy. And this is a thing I think that the president has to watch out for and should be very careful about. Part of the reason that he is back in office is because of this disconnect between the American people and the state of the economy. One of the things that the Biden administration used to love to say was, well, look at how the stock market is performing. Look at how the economy is performing. And we were saying over and over ago that there is a disconnect between what the American people are feeling on the ground and the way that the markets are performing, right? People are talking about groceries, they're talking about gas. Well, guess what? 9 months later, people are still talking about groceries, they're still talking about gas.
They're not talking about gas.
They're
Gas is at a 4-year low.
It depends on what part of the country you're in, but
Yeah,
they're
in
talking
California,
about.
it's really high, but everywhere else.
But they are
it's
also
low.
talking about eggs. They are talking about
are
the
low.
cost. Eggs are not low.
Eggs are low.
Have you been to a grocery store around here?
His
Eggs are
Rolex
low.
probably.
Eggs
I
are
mean,
low.
eggs are not low.
I'm gonna
I'm
fact
sorry.
check you after the show, and you're going to be surprised.
$8.99 for
Totally
eggs
false.
is not low. But what I'm saying
get
is,
ready for the
Eggs are-
the American people disagree with that, and they blame it very squarely.
If you guys think it's a good idea,
Hold on.
if you guys think it's a good idea,
We've been through this before. Eggs are lower than they were when Trump came into office, but not year over year. So
Eggs are very
that's
cheap
a
right
fact.
now.
the point,
Go ahead, Jared.
the point that I want to reiterate is that it sounds almost as if you guys did not learn the lesson that Democrats should have learned after the 2024 election, which is that if people are saying that that they feel like the economy is not getting better, if your approval rating is continuing to fall, right now, 75% of just 18 to 29-year-olds do not approve of the Trump presidency and how he is doing in his job. You can go and tell people all you want about the stock market. We've tried that. It did not work.
Well, if I
right?
could,
You can't change
if I
people's
may.
reality if you're just saying, look at this chart, you shouldn't feel this way. You need to talk to how they're actually feeling.
And now we're watching it escalate even further. Trump isn't just fighting political battles anymore. He's defying court orders, ignoring judges, and flat out refusing to pay food benefits that the government already has the money for. This isn't budget management. This isn't fiscal responsibility. It's cruelty, refined into policy. He's not making hard choices. He's making deliberate ones. He's choosing hunger. He's choosing chaos. He's using people's pain as a bargaining chip because suffering to him is leverage. When you can make millions desperate, you make them obedient. That's not governance, that's control through deprivation. And we need to understand what that means in human terms. We're not talking about statistics on a spreadsheet. We're talking about 42 million Americans, children, veterans, seniors, single parents who will wake up and find their EBT cards no longer work. Families who'll go to the grocery store and realize the money's gone. Veterans who served this country now standing in food bank lines because their government has decided to punish them for political optics. And the worst part, many of the people who will be hurt the most are the ones who believed him. States like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Kentucky, places that handed him victory after victory, are about to be hit the hardest. The same communities told that Trump fights for the forgotten man are the ones now being told, you can starve for the cause. That's the new definition of loyalty in MAGA world. Sacrifice yourself so your leaders can keep pretending they're the victims. It's a betrayal that hides behind slogans. America first, law and order, drain the swamp. But look closer, the swamp isn't drained. It's just deeper, murkier, and more profitable for the people swimming in it. While working families ration groceries, the same elites who caused the shutdown are throwing Gatsby-themed parties, bragging about how much they stand for the little guy. This is the real face of their populism. Because real populism feeds people. It doesn't starve them. Real populism builds schools, hospitals, and safety nets, not talking points and cults of personality. But what we're seeing is something darker. A weaponized version of tough love, where cruelty is rebranded as strength and empathy is dismissed as weakness. Where a government that could feed everyone decides it's more strategic to let people go hungry just to win an argument. And that's the deeper sickness here. It's not just Trump's defiance, it's the party's silence. Every senator, every representative, every conservative media voice who refuses to call this out is complicit. They'll say it's unfortunate or this is politics, as if starvation is just another partisan issue. It's not. It's a moral test and they're failing it in real time. Let's be clear about what's happening. This isn't about budgets. It's about punishment. It's about teaching people a lesson that if you rely on government assistance, you deserve to suffer for it. That compassion is weakness. That empathy is socialism. But here's the truth. Compassion isn't socialism. It's civilization. It's what separates leadership from cruelty. It's the reason we have a government in the first place, to protect people from exactly this kind of indifference. So when Trump decides to defy a court order and block food benefits, he's not standing up to the deep state. He's standing against hungry families. When he calls it fighting for America, he's really fighting against Americans. And when his supporters cheer him on for it, they're cheering for their own suffering, convinced it's strength. That's how propaganda works. It convinces you to applaud the hand that's taking from your mouth. And maybe that's the saddest part. The cruelty doesn't just come from the top. It trickles down through social media, through pundits, through people who've been taught that poverty equals laziness and hunger equals consequence. This is how empathy dies, not in one big moment, but in 1,000 tiny rationalizations. In the end, this isn't just about SNAP or shutdowns. It's about what kind of country we still want to be. Do we measure success by how the markets react, or by how many kids go to bed fed? Do we define strength as domination or as decency? Because a nation that can spend billions on wars and tax cuts but refuses to feed its own people isn't strong, it's hollow. And that's the moral reckoning we're facing right now. If democracy is supposed to mean anything, it has to mean compassion. Otherwise, it's just a word. Because when cruelty becomes normalized, when hunger becomes leverage, when leaders celebrate while citizens starve, that's not democracy anymore. That's feudalism in a red, white, and blue disguise.